recordings are going to go over the similarities and differences between designing for print media and designing for on-screen media. And these are all things that are important to know when we're making pieces for ourselves and for others. So I thought I would start off by talking about why it matters that you design specifically for how your piece is going to be used in the end. So when you're approaching a design problem, you need to keep in mind certain things, such as the restrictions we talked about. So you need to consider how your design is going to be used by yourself or by your client. Are you going to be printing it? Is it only going to be seen online? Is it only going to be projected on a computer like a presentation? Or is it something that maybe is going to have a life in both worlds? For example, our assignment for our poster, we're going to have social media icons as well as printing out a piece. So based on the answers to these, this is going to set up some of the requirements that you're going to need to incorporate when you set up your project. In this case, I'm going to tell you the requirements. Most of the time when you're out in the working world, whoever it is you're working for, if you're working for yourself especially, you'll need to know and understand the different requirements for the different formats. One of the big ones is resolution, and we're going to go over what the different requirements are, but it's important to keep in mind that you can always scale down your work, but scaling it up is usually an issue. I think we've all seen something printed out or on screen where it's been blown up way bigger than it should be, and it looks pixelated, it looks blurry, and frankly nothing looks less professional. So if you want to present yourself as a professional, you need to make sure that you're putting your best face forward. So it's also going to affect the formats that you deliver in. So you might want to work in one format that is the best that you know to work in when you're creating your file. But you might be then giving that file to a client to use online, using their social media, or you might be handing it off to a printer. So depending on who you're working with, you're going to possibly have set for you what kind of files you need to give them in the end. But you might know that, yes, that's a good file to end on, but I don't want to be saving my work as I go in this because it's going to lead to data loss. It's going to lead the image to basically not look good. So we're going to discuss some file types later on, and which file types are good for having your master file, the one that you work out of, and which ones are good for delivering to clients, but maybe have some drawbacks that mean that you don't want to be working in them at the beginning. So to kind of follow from this, you're going to want to work in an uncompressed file format. And there's several reasons for this, but most importantly, because you know the limitations. And so you know that if you are losing data along the way, then if you want to make a change, it means that your next file doesn't look as good as your last file. But keep in mind, you do always need to deliver what your clients ask for. So if your client wants some Facebook headers and icons and some photos to be used in their marketing material, you don't want to deliver them a Photoshop document. They may not have Photoshop. So if they've asked you for a JPEG, you need to deliver it as a JPEG, especially if you would like to get paid. But you need to know the best way to do that. And you also need to know occasionally that if a client asks for it in one format, you might need to ask a question, well, I know you're using this online, why are you asking for it as a TIFF? And then, maybe there's a good reason, but know enough to ask those questions. Because oftentimes the client doesn't know, and then you need to be the expert. You need to be the one who understands the differences between the different file formats. And understands, too, you want to keep a copy for yourself of your work for archival purposes. And when you're making an archival copy of something, you always want to make it in the best possible way so that you can use it in whatever format you need to in future. So it kind of all boils down to the fact that you need to know which tool from your toolbox best suits the job that you happen to be doing. So that's why I'm going to go through all these nitty-gritty details, and I want to to kind of understand the why behind the reason that you need to learn all this stuff. It's because when you go out and you've got a client who is like, well, I'm going to be doing this high resolution print, and I want it as a RGB JPEG, why you might want to question that, and that actually makes you look more professional and you look better in the end.